guys, today I'm doing iready reading. Let's go.
Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Ahead of Her Time, by Justin Libby.
So yeah. The title is
Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Ahead of Her Time, by Justin Libby.
The phrase, ahead of her time, describes a person whose beliefs, though seen as reasonable today, were extreme for the time in which she lived. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was ahead of her time. Long before women were legally seen as equal to men, she spoke out about women's rights. Her ideas seemed radical during her lifetime, but today we wonder how anyone ever thought differently. When Stanton was born in 1815, women could not vote in elections, nor could they hold an elected position in government, such as that of a mayor or senator. If a woman had a job, her wages legally belonged to her husband or another male relative. In fact, women could not own property of any kind at all. Stanton's father was a lawyer in Johnstown, New York, and as a child, young Elizabeth sometimes observed widows dressed in black coming to her father's office. They needed his help because their homes and other possessions had been given to their sons. The law stated that when a man died, his property was to be inherited by his oldest son, not his wife. Elizabeth pointed out this unfairness. But her father explained that, though he sympathized, there was legally nothing he could do. It would take a change in the state's law for him to be able to help. He suggested that someday Elizabeth should go to the state's lawmakers and persuade them to change the law.
Which statement supports the idea that Elizabeth Cady Stanton was ahead of her time?
She often observed desperate widows who came to her father for legal help. She supported women's rights when many laws treated women unfairly. She owned a large amount of property and controlled her own work wages.
As Stanton grew up, she did work to change laws that were unfair to women. She spoke publicly and wrote many articles about the subject. Then, in 1854, she finally got the chance to deliver a speech to the New York legislature, just as her father had suggested years before. In her speech, which her father helped write, she described the injustices women faced. She encouraged the lawmakers to change the laws that held women in an inferior position. It was the moral thing to do, she argued.
What does this biography help you understand about Stanton's achievements?
Stanton spent her life working to fix laws that treated women unfairly. During her life, her work helped women gain control of their property. Her example also encouraged other women to keep fighting for their rights. Just 18 years after she died, women won the right to choose leaders. Yay!
80 Years and More, by Elizabeth Cady Stanton. As you read, think about how the autobiography is similar to and different from the biography.
Many men still retained the old feudal ideas of women and property. Fathers, at their death, would will the bulk of their property to the eldest son, with the proviso that the mother was to have a home with him. The tears and complaints of the women who came to my father for legal advice touched my heart and early drew my attention to the injustice and cruelty of the laws. "When you are grown up and able to prepare a speech," said he, "you must go down to Albany and talk to the legislators. Tell them all you have seen in this office the sufferings of these women, robbed of their inheritance and left dependent on their unworthy sons. And, if you can persuade them to pass new laws, the old ones will be a dead letter."
Which detail in Elizabeth Cady Stanton's autobiography expresses a personal feeling that is not mentioned in her biography?
The second one.
Which information can be found in both the biography and autobiography? Stanton's idea of women's rights was radical during her lifetime. Stanton's father encouraged her to work to change unfair laws. Stanton thought many men had old-fashioned ideas about women.
Stanton's father encouraged her to work to change their unfair laws. Stanton felt the heartache for a widow who had no legal right to their husband's property. In 1902, a woman had won the right to control their own money, and 18 years later, they could vote.
Years later, Stanton prepared such a speech for the New York legislature, which she first read aloud to her father. When I had finished, I saw he was thoroughly magnetized. With beating heart, I waited for him to break the silence. At last, turning abruptly, he said, "Surely you have had a happy, comfortable life, with all your wants and needs supplied. And yet that speech fills me with self-reproach. For one might naturally ask, how can a young woman, tenderly brought up, who has had no bitter personal experience, feel so keenly the wrongs of her sex? Where did you learn this lesson?" "I learned it here," I replied, "in your office, when a child, listening to the complaints women made to you. They who have sympathy and imagination to make the sorrows of others their own can readily learn all the hard lessons of life from the experience of others."
How is the information in the biography and autobiography of Elizabeth Cady Stanton alike and different?
Both passages describe how Stanton's father wanted her to write a speech because her father wanted her to write a speech about women's rights in New York, but only the biography tells about the results. Bye-bye. Actually, never mind. That was just, never mind. Sorry. Stanton's work beyond her lifetime, and only the autobiography in Stanton's memory of her father's thoughts, her attempts, reaction to her words.
Booker T. Washington, An Exceptional Life by Justin Libby. Read carefully. You only get one try to answer each question.
Sometimes in the... Bye guys, that's all for now. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And please comment what you want me to do next. Bye-bye.